stress, disappointment, making excuses, time management, an emotional state that sometimes keeps us stuck and thinking it's okay. We talk about hooking and unhooking our devices and attention span when it comes to our digital exposure to phones and social media and email and all the things that keep us busy. But are we productive? Welcome to Simple Sense for Small Business. And today I'm going to be talking with Anna from Burnout Broccoli. She's going to be sharing how she got her name and also how she became an NLP coach, neuro-linguistic programming, after going through her own stress burnout at a very young age while in the tech industry. We cover a lot of topics that most people do not want to talk about. On her website, she has a fabulous notation. Vision is glamorous, productivity is boring. And I couldn't agree more. I can't wait for you to hear our conversation. So let's get right into it. Let's kick it off. Anna, please tell us everything about anything you would like to share with everybody, especially the name of your business and how you got started and your background.
Let me tell you the story then. I wasn't always an NLP coach, which NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, for those of you who maybe haven't heard of it before, which, by the way, is how we connected with Linda. She's familiar with NLP, which is super cool. And I'll tell you a little bit about why you should even care about NLP later. In the meantime, how did I get here? I used to work in tech for probably 10 years. I was a researcher, I was coaching product teams, and I was having a good time. I loved my job. So, I got paid well, did some cool stuff, like working on projects like, for example, the high-tech devices for brain sensing, translation of information into sound and things like that. So, it was cool. And then I crossed over into my 30s and I burnt out. So I crashed pretty hard from burnout. And at that point, I had to make some major changes in my life. And unfortunately, the professionals didn't have all the answers for me. So I had no choice but to kind of, look to other solutions to try to get my energy back and figure out what is happening exactly. And so that's how I discovered biohacking and, changing my habits and working with my biology to get that energy back and feel like, a non-loser human again, like I can do stuff. So, that was cool and all. And at that point, I reassessed what I want to be doing in life. And I saw that a lot of my friends were burning out as well. And they were in tech, and everybody knew that technology had contributed to that massively. And, I thought, okay, maybe I want to be helping people rather than building more sophisticated tech, which I feel like we have a lot of cool tech out there already. So let's maybe, help the people feel better and take control of their health and wellness journey. So that's how I started Burnout Broccoli. And the reason I called it that, the quirky name has to do with the fact that broccoli was one of the things I started eating a lot of during my recovery process in order to help the body get the nutrition it needs, the vitamins, do the detoxing, fix that digestion, get those hormones rebalanced again. And, I was never big on greens or anything like that, but broccoli became my best friend. So
I love broccoli. There's something about it with the crunch, but I also know that it gets a little bit of a bad rap because it's cruciferous. So there are some diet plans, which diet is a 4-letter word, and we know that they don't condone cruciferous vegetables. I thought that was great because I love broccoli. Sometimes if I have it consistently, I crave it because of, I guess, the nutrients, but also that it can have a little bit of crunch. That's kind of very meaningful then, which when you're starting a business and a brand, when you find something that you can emotionally connect with, that triggers you in such a positive way, in a wellness kind of way, I think that's fantastic. So your health journey began and broccoli was part of it.
For anyone out there who loves broccoli but is maybe afraid because cruciferous are getting a bad rap, I just want to give you the good news. People who think they're bad for you just don't know how to cook them properly. There are oxalates in them. And, so some people are saying that basically those compounds are harmful. You have to cook them, even if it's ever so slightly. So, for example, even with kale, you gotta cook it a little bit, just like a little bit of blanching, and it's all good, and you don't have to worry about it. So,
Thank you.
broccoli is safe. It's my gift to you, people.
Love that. I'm going to have to put that on the thumbnail. Broccoli is your gift. You're welcome.
That's right. Perfect. Perfect. Well, in that biohacking spirit, when I started helping folks get back up on their feet from burnout and these kinds of issues, I found that biohacking was, working okay for me, but it just didn't kind of deliver 100% the results I was hoping for with folks. And so for me as a coach, I then retrained as an NLP coach because I wanted to be able to help people also deal with the stuff that's getting in the way of them making these new healthy resolutions in their life. And NLP is great for that because what it enables you to do is to get to the emotions that are behind your decisions. And so when I retrained as an NLP coach, I suddenly realized, whoa, this is crazy. Emotions are behind everything. The way we make all these choices, there really isn't a whole lot of rational decision making, no matter how much you guys might be telling this to yourself. And the example I love using is those. There was an experiment with a person who was missing the part of the brain that was responsible for processing emotions, and they just kept going back and forth between two options, rationally comparing them, and they couldn't make the decision because they didn't have those proper chemicals to be able to then right the processing ability to take those chemicals and turn them into the decision. And that is such a stark example for me of how we don't make any decisions rationally. And so if you don't have control over your biology and emotions of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then how can you truly be productive, healthy, happy, or make any changes in your life that matter, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right?
I want to just interject if you don't mind, because
Mhm.
you're talking my language as far as emotions hijacking us in critical moments of decision making. And I think that's where also people lose time in their business and the productivity. And one of the blogs that I absolutely loved that you quoted, vision is glamorous, but productivity is boring. And that's why I kind of knew it was meant to be that we should at least have an initial conversation here and now make it public, because I've been saying for years that if it's boring, you're probably doing something right. Because
Love that.
because it's like that's part, and you summed it up nicely with making it very articulate by saying, there's a consistency formula that plays into that. So where does it break down with excuses and just, I guess, I don't know if it's just getting tangential or getting emotional and irrational, and then decision making is hijacked, and then we're going off with other, like, in all different directions. How do you help people when you see that, and you must be haunted by it all the time, to get clarity and to get focused? How does that work?
Well, in some ways, it can happen instantly. NLP does help with that because it reprograms your emotional response. But then there is the habitual aspect of it. So I like to think of this hijacking as a kind of process whereby you make a decision to do something good, to do it right. Let's say today you need to send out 10 emails to your prospects, and you're absolutely dedicated to doing that. But then you get up in the morning and maybe you had a bad conversation, or something didn't go your way, or the weather sucks, and you are in that sort of state of, I'm not feeling good about myself, the weather, those states you can be in, right? Everything is just blah. And that's a kind of emotional, affective state that is not conducive to being productive or pushing yourself to do difficult things. And what happens next is that your brain, which is your friend, but also sometimes not, is kind of getting in the way because it thinks it's going to help you by saving you some energy and helping you not do the thing that's difficult. But it's effectively hijacking your process. So now you're starting to come up with these excuses in your head. It's this subtle, quiet conversation you're probably not tracking, but it could sound something like, I'm not feeling so good. Maybe it's okay if I skip out on this particular task today. You know what? It's not that big a deal because there's this other thing that I can be doing, and that's valuable too. So let me get to that. And you know what? After I do that one, I'm going to feel so much better. And then I'll have no problem getting to that other task. And then usually this chain of events kicks in where you start delaying the unpleasant task. And next, you're starting to develop the guilt and you're feeling bad because I'm supposed to be doing something. I don't even remember what. It doesn't feel quite right. I'm doing things, being productive, but I'm not getting the satisfaction. I don't even know. So the next thing, you're having bad sleep and you're having, weird thoughts and a busy mind, and your sort of emotional buffer is overloaded, and you just feel like you have too much going on and you can't deal with anything, and it's all overflowing. And that's how overwhelm starts, and eventually that can lead to burnout. So the way you want to address that is by noticing these things and noticing how you kind of quietly slip away, right? And go on a tangent. And then you want to bring yourself back. And it's a consistent practice, a kind of, habit, a muscle that I help people train, because it doesn't just magically happen. It's a kind of skill. Just like you go to the gym and you learn to lift heavier and heavier weights, you also learn to self-regulate in a way that you start noticing this more. But of course, the thing is, even for me as a coach, I always need reminders from other people. That's why I have a coach, right? Because I'm human too, and our mind, for all of us, works the same way. Sometimes it just doesn't notice how it starts going on tangents. And so it's helpful to kind of have someone notice that and be like, hey, what's going on? Why are you putting that thing off? Or you're like a little bit too all over the place. What's happening to you right now? Those little check-ins. And, sometimes we get those from family members or friends too. Super helpful, right?
If someone doesn't, you mentioned something about satisfaction, and it's not giving me that satisfaction. Doesn't it start with knowing what would be a satisfactory result, or what would bring me satisfaction? If we don't even know that, it's sort of like having a goal, or you want this result, but you actually don't know how to go about to do it. So is that a starting point to understand what is satisfying to me? What would make me feel fulfilled, so I'm not all over the place and distracted? And number two, I'm not overwhelmed when things are all of a sudden going haywire. So how does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such an excellent point you're making. Such a good question, because for a lot of us, especially high achievers out there, right, which a lot of entrepreneurs are, first of all, what is satisfying to us, it can be difficult to nail, because we are used to systematically, habitually, either overestimate our efforts or underestimate our efforts and set goals that are perhaps bigger than what's realistic. And so that gap between what we want and how much we achieve can feel extremely dissatisfying and disappointing. So learning to actually accurately calibrate your nervous system and your emotional capacity to goal setting is really important, because when you assess more adequately where you should be and how long things take, then you don't tend to get disappointed as much.
Mm.
But I also want to say that disappointment is actually a funny feeling, and a feeling you can use to your advantage. So, what I train people to do is kind of become more emotionally literate. Because a lot of the time, we are not aware of all of our emotions. The ones that we are aware of, we might consider them as negative, like dissatisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
there is a way to actually take this dissatisfaction and use that emotional energy behind it to then
Mm.
power progress, uh, which is pretty cool.
That is very cool, which actually leads quite nicely into a question that I wasn't sure when it would come up. But since you brought up disappointment, can you either confirm or deny if discomfort is a not a great strategy to approach a situation? So, in other words, I kind of have been of the mindset that if something triggers me that I'm uncomfortable about it, I do kind of analyze it a bit to understand, is it just fear of a fake rejection? Is it fear of a fake failure of some kind? So I try to embrace and hug. If I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to go for it anyway. Do you recommend that, or is that something that is just someone's personal strategy and is very subjective?
Mhm. Well, I don't have the science to back it up necessarily, but my, subjective perception is that um, if not for the
Mhm.
embrace of difficult, then I don't even know why we're here as entrepreneurs. Because frankly, if anyone tells you that entrepreneurship can be easy and smooth, is either lying or hasn't done it before, or I don't know.
It's true. You do have to kind of embrace it, is it? Because it's a constant. It can be consistently there are challenges, right? Consistently. There are challenges to overcome.
Yeah, there's
So
consistently challenges, which means the reality of the situation, which sometimes we're in denial of, is that the challenges are consistent. So it's okay to make it a part of the process and just be prepared for it and have an open sort of disposition towards embracing difficulties, building the resilience to embrace those
mm,
difficulties rather than just hoping for the best and thinking my scenario is unique. I'm not gonna have to deal with XYZ, so I'm gonna be okay, right?
I have chills that building resilience. And I think that I must have chills because I don't know. For me, I can honestly say I don't like think about that all the time. Like, am I building resilience? Do I feel resilient today? I don't think about it like that. But maybe that's where the NLP, and I don't know if this is even possible to perhaps break down for someone who hasn't been through a certification course like you have, like I have, how the mechanics of NLP contribute to all of the things that you're saying, but then actually putting it into practical application every day of the ins and outs, the on, off, in, out, up, down of business. Is there a way for you to share that so people can like maybe visualize how that might work?
Okay, let's try this.
Okay.
So first and foremost, I think of NLP as just another tool in your toolbox, right? So you can use it. The problem with tools is not the tool or its function, but how you use it and when you use it. I love what you said earlier, Linda, because you said, I don't really think about resilience on a daily basis. Am I doing it? Am I not doing it? And I think for most people, they're in the same boat. However, if you want to be prepared for when the proverbial storm comes, you definitely want to kind of train for that throughout the process of building a business, right? So that means if someone makes building resilience a part of their daily routine, then they'll be prepared for the difficult time. because it's not our willpower that is going to get us through and make sure we don't burn out, but sort of how good of a state we are in, how quickly can we bounce back. And it's just like going to the gym as well. It's same thing, you build that habit. So you want to build your resilience just like you build your retirement fund or anything else, right? Just how you invest into scaling your business over time, right? Because the results will come from that compounded effect and the training. So NLP can be one of the tools that you use as long as you use it daily, right? And because NLP works with your emotional state, there's various techniques out there. There is also, conversational approaches, but you can start with a very simple thing that you can just do yourself, which is just checking in with yourself daily and asking yourself whether this particular thing you're thinking is really true, or maybe it's just a story you're telling yourself.
That's why I said fake failure, fake rejection, because we are really good at making up stories with worst case scenarios and projected futures that don't even exist. And, I was trained in the insurance business where we kind of had to predict the worst case scenario so that people could protect themselves with financial products like insurance, right? So, that's why I think it's so fascinating that I was aware I might not want to let this slip in a lot, into my daily life of my own personal trying to plan or strategize into the future for business. Now, I know you came from the tech industry and you experienced burnout and that you had a lot of contacts, acquaintances, friends that you felt the same way and that resonated with you. But it's not just, it's not just tech industry. People in business that aren't in the tech industry still use tech. Do you think technology is contributing more and more these days to potential burnout and stress?
Yeah, I think it is massively. And when sociology is one of the things I studied in university. And at the time, this was still, I just got my first mobile phone, with a tiny little screen on there and, the buttons and everything, not a smartphone. And we were studying in sociology about technology and sort of projected futures and potential impact down the road. And so today, when I look at where we're at with technology, we're very much there. And because we're in the middle of it and it's been happening gradually, we don't notice the impact, but it's essentially been sapping so many of our cognitive and emotional resources. Especially because the tech is now so sophisticated and it's all designed around holding your attention and holding it for prolonged periods of time, which is essentially mining your neurotransmitters. And if you're wasting them here in this particular spot, guess what? You're not going to have enough to be able to then focus on whatever else you're doing, your business, your family. And so what we're seeing now, I think the simplest example that I can use of just how much our society changed and has been impacted is you see families sitting in a restaurant with little kids, and the little kids are on their device, right, poking around because, that way parents can have a little bit of their own time. And sometimes they're on the devices too, right? And everyone is sort of disconnected from each other, which, of course, if you know anything about how relationships work, our attention is that currency that we trade between one human to another human. And, that's what the foundation of love is as well. So there is that. And then there is, of course, what it's doing in terms of making our society a lot more primitive in how we think, because everything has become so templatized, the way we interact with the machines, they've conditioned us. So people, let's not kid ourselves in terms of who's driving whom here, really, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a bilateral relationship. And the algorithms have conditioned us to kind of interact with them a certain way. They've programmed us to level down our cognition to kind of do things in a more simple, more primitive way. And that instant gratification is also hurting us, because now, our expectation is that things in real life are going to be as easy. And one example is dating apps, right? So many people have difficulty building meaningful relationships because it's now so easy to get that quick connection with someone, satisfy certain needs, and then move on. So tech has changed society dramatically. And then another thing, of course, is the informational overload. So I call it, I don't have a better way to explain it other than I call it the third job. Basically, with the advent of technology, internet, email, and all that, as more of our work moved online, we created a third job for ourselves. So remember how women used to work at home, and it was called, the second job, and the unpaid work and all that, right? The stuff that was invisible, that was getting done but unrecognized. Well, now all of us, men, women, and children, are working for free a certain amount of hours in our day, checking email, managing our socials, doing the back and forth on digital through various community groups and all that. And that's basically unpaid work that we're doing in managing our digital life, right? On top of everything else we used to do before.
It's true, actually. You bring up this point about the algorithm and our attention disconnecting from loved ones and family and friends to get that immediate gratification from a machine. That's like, let's sit there for a second, right? Because when you think about it like that, it's very powerful of how we're so distracted. And then that leads to all the things that we've already mentioned. It leads to disappointment and not embracing discomfort when productivity could be the result. And all those, the noise and distractions. And I think that leads me to another question that just happened to work out very nicely with I'm on this new kick about excuses. So all this that we've talked about kind of sums up our emotions and protecting ourselves, but living for the machine. How do we stop, or how do we even know we're making excuses? And how do we stop to then make a different decision?
That's an excellent question. And I love it, because I hope that everyone who's listening gets a chance to reflect right now, because it's not that easy if you don't take a pause and think about it. Um, People don't like when I call it addiction, but it is an addiction. We're all addicted to digital. There's a very easy way to diagnose it, which is, if I'm going to ask you right now if you're comfortable to turning off your phone and leaving it for a day, just one day, and if you're experiencing a lot of discomfort and worry and anxiety about that, and thoughts like, how will people get a hold of me? That means you are dependent on your device. So that goes for YouTube, that goes for Netflix, all of that entertainment stuff as well. And so, since most of us are dependent on that stuff, the mechanics at play here are no longer as simple as just a decision. You need to approach it as addiction. So that's why in the training that I do for digital detox, for example, I explain the basic mechanics of addiction and neurochemistry involved in there, and what it means to balance yourself out. And if you truly want to have better control over your focus and motivation and even your relationships, I think the first step is, of course, recognizing that truly this is a type of addiction, even though it doesn't feel like a big deal, right? But sometimes you might be reaching for your pocket and checking if the phone is there, and that's a sign. That's a sign that you're hooked. So you got to start unhooking yourself, and that's not going to be pleasant at first. And you need to go through this process of discomfort for a bit, right? You're going to have withdrawals. I'm sorry, it's a part of the process, but that's just how it works. And when you go through that process, you're going to feel a lot of relief. you're going to feel this calm and peace and this unfamiliar state of, I'm just okay on my own here. I don't need stuff to keep pinning me or to keep checking or entertaining me. And that's extremely liberating. So everyone deserves to experience that, because we've forgotten what that's like. And it's kind of new luxury, to be frank with you, to disconnect and just be in the real life. And I think you want to do that from time to time, almost as a preventative thing, because this dependency is not something that you fix once and it goes away. You need to kind of maintain it. So in this new digital world, our lifestyle also needs to adjust, because if it doesn't, then technology is just going to eat us alive. And at some point, there's probably going to be a cool tech solution where you're going to have a whole digital brain to replace yours because yours is useless now. And you're going to pay millions of dollars for that. But, it's a different story.
You might not be too far off there at some point. Maybe not in our lifetime, but I think it's coming. But you have a great quiz that was a little alarming, even for me. And you're talking about this unhooking. And I felt really good when I started the quiz. I was like, all right, I know that I used to do that. And I kind of unhooked with some things here and unhooked with some things there. And then I was like, oh man, then I was hitting yes, 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 yes. And so we're going to put the link to the quiz in the description and the show notes for the video. I think there's 36 questions, something like that. But they're yes and no. And then you get a score. And then what happens? What can what do people do with that quiz? Do you get a notification like with bells going off, an alarm, and call 911? This person is so hooked.
Yes, I do get a notification. So then I follow up with the person. I kind of explain what it all means. And, I try not to sound alarmist. So it's okay. It's pretty cool if you've tried it, right? And you can see, okay, there are certain things you might want to tweak. So from there, if anyone is interested, you can get a breakdown of what the things mean, what the specific behaviors mean. And of course, you can also book a free session if you want to understand which of these you want to focus on first, sort of prioritizing the specific area. So, yeah.
I'm very excited for you. I talk to a lot of really cool people, and I often say, I could talk to you all day. And this is no different. I just loved how you connected with me, and you were very open because we didn't even talk about the time management aspect of how you incorporate, I guess, some of your counseling or consulting with business owners. And I know we touched on it without actually saying the word time management. We talked about productivity and, just being distracted and overwhelmed and making excuses. So with time management, and maybe to tie it up, is that a basis to start on tracking time or looking at your time to then kind of have like reverse engineer it? How does that work?
Mm. Well, I guess I would say that time management really is just emotional management in a nutshell. And, there are many layers to that, but our time perception changes depending on how we feel. So it's not stable. And when you're stressed, you perceive your time as less. Sometimes you perceive it as, taking too long. So to have a more accurate perception of time and planning and all that, and to have the motivation to do it, you need to practice stress management on a regular basis. So emotional regulation is going to help you better plan, have control over your time. And then all the different tools that you're using are going to work better, because what happens when people get into times of stress, they don't notice how the stress is building up. They lose that self-awareness. That is true for every single human being out there. And so the tools you might have been using previously will stop working for you. So, at some point, the list suddenly becomes too much, or, you just abandon certain systems you've set up. You just don't want to deal with things. So no matter which productivity system you're using and how you're using it, you can start anywhere. You can start tracking your time. You can, set up digital notifications, automations, all sorts of cool things, right? But at the same time, none of that is going to be as effective as those tools in combination with emotional management on a regular,
Mm.
consistent basis, because then you're truly using the tools, right? Because you are the ultimate tool right here. The body, the mind is the ultimate tool. So that first and foremost needs to be in good shape, and then everything else should fall in place for you.
Wow, we've mentioned some words that can trigger people, right? Being productive, P, productive, proactive, right? And then preventative. Those three P words, you know, they would aid in, to me, it seems as though it would aid in starting to minimize the stress and excuses, disappointment, overwhelm, all those negative words that I'm not sure if you would agree with this, but I feel like we default to those, and it's almost like we don't even know until it's really bad that it's happening, that it's something we have to attend to. That's why health and wellness to me might be hopefully getting some more highlight on it, especially because of COVID and people with lockdown finding out just the point of pressure that is the breaking point for people. But why do we have to wait till it's so bad, right? So you're saying we don't, essentially, right?
We don't, but most of us do. It's unfortunate, and that's part of our human nature. We're not very good at being proactive and, doing the long-term stuff. And that's probably one of the reasons why we are collectively where we are.
Yeah.
But it's never too late to learn, right? And I mean, I've sadly learned my lesson the hard way. So now I try to stay on top of these things and pay attention. And I have this inner voice which is sort of pushing me, telling me, you can't get there again, ever. So you better pick up on whatever you've been slacking with, whatever routine that is, regardless of what's happening, don't ever get there again. And then for those people who have never been in a bad place, or maybe they've been there repeatedly and they've just somehow self-justified that it's okay to keep ending up there, that's probably because you just haven't experienced what it's like to be in a good state most of the time. And
Mm.
it's awesome. You deserve it, it's well worth it. Why not kind of dedicate some time to yourself and building up that beautiful, good future self? Honestly, like, why are we running these businesses? So we can have a better life. So why break your life to make a better life?
That is so beautiful. And on that note, where can people find you? Where would you like to direct folks to learn more about you and maybe just pick up on some other valuable tips and tools that you share on your website and on your social media?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So definitely look me up, Burnout Broccoli. That's going to be easy to find. So connect with me on Instagram or Twitter. I love saying hello to people. I try to post different conversations with entrepreneurs, tips, and I have freebies to give away as well if you want to connect with me.
You are a delight, Anna. I can't thank you enough for being so nimble in quickly accepting my invitation to come here. I mean, I think it was just only a couple days ago.
Thank you, Linda. Well, I liked you. And you know what? I don't waffle when I see something good. I just go for it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. I find this for myself to be so valuable. And typically, when I want to speak to somebody, there are some selfish reasons. And so, this has been so insightful for me and valuable. And I know it will be for a lot of people. So, I appreciate your time. And I want to say thank you. And I know we're going to see you on Twitter and a lot of other and Instagram. So, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Linda. You're a joy to talk to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.